Hey everybody, welcome to the Conscious Love Show. Whether you are single, you are in a relationship, or you're healing a broken heart, this show is here to inspire you, to remind you how beautiful, lovable, and amazing you truly are, and to give you the practical tools and insights to navigate from wherever you are right now to the loving relationship that you so deeply want to have. My name is Shane Kohler. I'm a certified transformational coach and trainer with over a decade experience helping people release their trauma and open their hearts to love. I've delivered seminars all over the world, coached thousands of people through my online platforms and programs, and every week I'm coming straight to you with the hottest insights and the best teachers around, bringing you powerful resources and profound conversations to heal your relationship with love, dating, and yourself. I'm so grateful you're here, and if it's your first time, welcome. You can count on me to always show up for you with my very best and a commitment to learn and grow myself so I can serve you to my maximum ability. Thanks so much for tuning into the show. I've got some awesome things planned for you today. So without further ado, let's dive in. Hey, what's up everybody? And welcome back to another episode of the Conscious Love Show. Shane Kohler here. Pleasure to be back with you today, as always. And I'm looking forward to today's episode. Today we're going to talk about, are you a love addict? And two questions that reveal the truth of that question. And I want to say that this topic is particularly potent for me, I think, because of my history. And many of you may be familiar with things I've shared on the show before, but if you're not, I just want to quickly share a little bit of kind of where I come from and why I think I can offer a unique perspective on this topic. So again, you've probably heard me share before, but I do have quite an extensive background in addiction, both being an addict, recovering from addiction, helping others recover, working in treatment centers. So, I grew up in an addict alcoholic household. By 13, I was addicted to weed. By 16, I was addicted to pills and opiates. And by 18, I was pretty heavily carrying a real drug addiction. I was using oxys and roxys for anyone who knows about that stuff. And I got sober when I was 21. And it was a series of events that led to my sobriety, which, long story, I don't want to get into all that today. But I got sober when I was 21. And so from ages 21, I'd say really all throughout my 20s were really characterized by working with addiction. So first I got myself sober. I went through a 12-step program called CA to get myself sober. Then I sponsored people through that program. So I worked with other addicts to help them get sober. And then later in my 20s, I was actually hired to work as a therapist in treatment centers. And I think as I say that, I do want to preface that I'm not actually a licensed therapist, but because of my connections in the coaching world and because of the training I was receiving in different modalities and coaching therapies, I was hired by a consulting company to go into treatment centers and run these group therapy sessions. And so I spent quite a few years traveling around to all different treatment centers all through South Florida and working with groups of addicts and delivering courses and programs designed to help them recover. And so I say all of this to say that I have quite an extensive background in addiction. And when it comes to dealing with love addiction, when I look at my history, I got sober at 21. I was in a position where I was looking at doing many years in prison if I didn't get sober, right? It was vitally important for me to get my life together if I wanted to have any kind of life at all. And fortunately, I think a lot of it was spiritually. I think I was helped. I think I had a lot of help in that journey. I definitely don't think I was alone, but for whatever reason, I found myself able to clean my life up, and I'm forever grateful for that. But I think as I got off the drugs and I got sober and I started putting my life together, I kind of naturally transitioned into a love addiction. And the thing about love addiction and some of what we're going to talk about today is that, when you're a love addict, you are doing very normal things. You are doing things that everybody does. You are engaged in things that everybody is engaged in. So your behavior, you can definitely point, and we'll talk about some of those things today. You can point to certain patterns of behavior that are more addictive versus just genuine relational behaviors. But, on the surface, it appears to yourself and it appears to everybody else that you're a very normal person. Whereas someone who's addicted to heroin or even weed, there tends to be some signs, or even alcohol, right? There tends to be some signs that something is off with that person. Whereas love addiction, those signs, while they are there, and we'll talk about what they are today, they're not as obvious as other types of addiction. And I think for myself, I got sober, and as soon as I got sober, what I wanted more than anything was a relationship. And I started dating a lot and, just doing whatever I could to have relationships and experiences with women. But I would do whatever I could to, form these connections and have these relationships. And when I look back on that, knowing what I know now, I can see that while, yes, I think I had what we all have, is a deep, genuine desire to love and to be loved. And I think that's fundamental to every human being. But while I did have that, I also, without realizing it, found an activity or a pursuit that could generate a lot of the similar brain states that drugs did. It's not rocket science to realize that, when you are falling in love with someone, or when you're having sex with someone new, and the intensity of the experience is there's a chemical reaction that happens in your brain that is very, very similar to what drugs do to your brain, right? There's a relief of these neurochemicals in such incredible amounts that it creates a high. And I think for me, it was very natural to transition from a drug high to that high. If I had known that back then, right? If I had known that back then, I think I could have helped myself a lot better. Fortunately, despite the fact that I didn't really realize I was a love addict, I was involved in personal development work. I was being trained as a coach and being trained in different healing modalities, and I was learning how to use these for myself. And so I think without even really realizing it, I healed a lot of my love addiction just through meditation and just, personal growth practices that I was doing naturally. So I say all this to say, just to give you a little context of where I'm coming from with this discussion. And I want to start by presencing that I think we are all addicts to some degree. And I say that with very, very few exceptions. Now, there are very extreme addictions where people are living on the streets, selling their lives away. And there are very mild addictions where we may not even realize they exist. But I would say with really two exceptions, unless you've had some kind of spontaneous spiritual enlightenment, which does happen to certain people at certain times, but it's very rare, or unless you've done an incredible amount of work on yourself, like you probably have some addictions, you probably have some addictive tendencies. And the reason I say that, and I want to just let's just define addiction in the way we're going to talk about it today. Like, why do I say that? I say that because addiction itself, if we're going to define addiction is something we turn to when we are trying to escape our own fear. And to the degree that we carry fear is the degree that we are going to seek things to attempt to mitigate that fear. And so when we feel an emptiness inside, we feel a sense of loss, we feel a sense of frustration, we feel a sense of hopelessness, disempowerment, feeling stuck, feeling like we can't get anywhere, feeling rejected, we could go on and on with the list of experiences, right? But when we feel this kind of emptiness inside, or when we doubt ourselves, or when we doubt our worth, or we doubt our lovability, or we doubt that we're good enough, or that the world wants us, or that people want us, or any and all of the above, there is a tendency to try to seek for something outside of ourselves to heal that experience. And that mechanism that I'm describing right now, feeling the different forms of fear on the inside, feeling the loss, the emptiness, the hopelessness, the inadequacy, whatever forms of fear there are, feeling those different forms of fear on the inside, and then reaching outside of yourself to try to make up for those feelings. Whether you do that with drugs, whether you do that with alcohol, whether you do that with sex, whether you do that with gambling, or whether you do that with relationships. and love. It is all the same mechanism, right? It's all the same mechanism at play. When my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer, we started making a lot of changes to our lifestyle. And one of the most important changes we made was cutting out coffee. We didn't realize it at the time, but even 1 cup of coffee a day can flood your body with stress hormones and keep you in a consistent state of fight or flight, which we now know is not only a very uncomfortable way to live, but is also a ripe condition for disease to occur. Some of the best coffee substitutes we found were matcha green tea and adaptogenic mushrooms. And these are so amazing because they can offer many of the same benefits that coffee offers while also helping to regulate your nervous system and adding incredible health benefits. And if you would like to try this for yourself, we've teamed up with this incredible conscious ethical company called Rise. And by using the code ShaneK15, you can save 15% on your entire order. So go ahead, check it out. I know you're going to love it. It's going to taste great. It's going to make you feel even better. And I can't wait to see what you think of it. So check it out in the description below wherever you're listening to this episode, and lots of love. I think what is important to address here is that whenever we seek something through that mechanism, that thing has to be unfulfilling. So just let that sink in for a minute, right? Any time that you are trying to make up for an emptiness or a loss or an inadequacy that you feel inside with something outside of yourself. So let me get this person's attention. Let me get their love. Let me go have a few drinks. Let me go whatever, right? Anytime you do that, that thing has to be unfulfilling because it has to reflect the place in which you're approaching it from, right? So like if I'm approaching it from, I feel inadequate. Let's just talk about a relationship for a moment. I feel inadequate and I'm approaching a relationship saying, if this person will love me, I will feel adequate. I will feel like enough. That relationship from the start is doomed. That relationship from the start, it's a failure because it will ultimately have to reflect back to me the place in which I approach it from. And I think it's one of the biggest lies in the world that there is anything outside of us that can make us feel better about ourselves. That there is anything outside of us that can improve our confidence, that there is anything outside of us that can make us feel at ease or at peace or relaxed, right? That there is anything outside of us that can give us anything that is truly, truly valuable. As you're listening to this, like you might really struggle to understand how a relationship cannot offer you something that is truly valuable. And so I want to clarify that point right there before we move forward. And I want to acknowledge first that, of course, relationships do offer valuable things, right? Companionship is valuable. Connection is valuable. Having someone to do things with and be intimate with and share your dreams with and build a life with and have a family with and all of it, right? Like there's value in that. Those are valuable experiences. So I'm not saying there's no value in having a relationship. But when you approach a relationship wanting it to offer you something that you feel you don't already have, that relationship cannot offer you that. And so your attempt to have the relationship do that will actually deprive everything the relationship does have to offer, right? Like everything I just mentioned, all the good stuff, all the real value that's in a relationship, you will not be able to get a hold of that because of where you're approaching the relationship from. Approaching the relationship from this place, inevitably, 100% of the time, leads to some kind of disappointment. Whether that's you attract and are attracted to toxic people because of where you're approaching it or how you're approaching it. Whether you are not able to become intimate or vulnerable with someone because the fear of the inadequacy inside doesn't allow you to truly reveal yourself to the person, right? Whether your fear of losing the person or if they're going to choose someone else or lose interest, right? If that fear gets so big that you start acting out and sabotaging the relationship, right? Like these are all the different things that happen when we approach a relationship from that empty place. And I want to say that the emptiness that I'm speaking about, that sense of inadequacy, that sense of loss, that sense of whatever, you fill in the blank with the word that you feel the most. That is almost a universal human experience, which is why I say that we are almost all addicted to something, because we all feel that and we all want to escape it. And we all want to escape it without doing the really hard work that's required to truly escape it. So what'll we do? Well, we'll drink a little extra. We'll shop a little extra. We'll smoke a little weed. We'll cling to relationships. We'll watch hours and hours and binge watch television, right? We'll do all these little addictions, all these little things to distract us from how we're feeling, to distract us from how we're feeling about ourselves. And that is the essence of addiction. And I think everybody has a different relationship with that dynamic. There are people who just go all the way with it, right? And we've talked about throwing their lives away with it. There are people who actually do genuinely love themselves too much to throw their whole lives away with it. And if you're listening to this, that's probably you, right? Like that was me. Like I reached a point where I said, I don't want to throw my whole life away. And so I got rid of my drug addiction, right? The majority of people in the world, while we do have some of these addictive tendencies, we also love ourselves and we love our life, or at least the idea of our life, enough to not want to throw it all away. But at the same time, we're still looking for something to mitigate that pain. So we don't go all the way with it. We don't go all the way to throwing our whole lives away. But instead we dance with it. We play with it. And what you might find it looks like for you, if you are in fact a love addict, I don't even think saying you are a love addict is the right way to put it. But maybe a better way to put it would be to say that you experience strong addictive tendencies around love, right? I think that might be a more clear way to talk about it. But the way this might look for you is simply that when you do become attracted to someone, or when you do get involved in a relationship, there's an obsessive level of attachment that comes along with that. There's a kind of constant rumination that comes with that. There's a kind of constant fear that comes with that. A need to kind of meddle with the situation and try to, skew it one way or the other, right? And in fact, I did a little research on this to point out some clear signs of love addiction, and I'm going to go over them in a moment. But what I want to point out first is that what this may look like for a lot of us is that, we get really into a relationship when that becomes available. And then when it's not, maybe we spend hours and hours binge watching TV, or maybe we, stay up all night online shopping, or maybe we, drink a little too much. You might find yourself just cracking open that bottle of wine every night or every couple of nights when normally you don't drink that often, right? So what a lot of us do is we kind of cycle through different addictions based on what's happening, right? When you're attracted to someone and you're getting filled with all those neurochemicals and you're on that, like you don't want to drink or you don't want to binge watch TV, right? You're into the person. But when you're not feeling that high, then you mitigate that pain with something else, right? You start drinking wine every night, or you start smoking weed, or you start doing different things. And so I think a lot of us tend to keep our addictions in more of a moderate place, right? We don't go to the extremes with it. But I think what a lot of us might be missing in that is that just because it's not so extreme on the surface doesn't mean that the impact overall is not extreme. If you're questioning, do you have a love addiction? One of the clearest ways that you might relate to it, because I think what any kind of addiction creates is a feeling in life that we are seeking but not finding. Right? So just think about that for a moment. Like, addictions create kind of a consistent feeling that we are seeking but not finding. So we're chasing, pursuing. There's this idea that one day when X happens or when Y happens or when Z happens, then I'll finally be able to be happy. Maybe it's when I meet that person, I'll finally be able to be happy. When I fall in love, when I have my family, when I have my house, whatever it is, I'll finally be able to be happy. But what addiction creates is an inability to enjoy the fullness of your life right now while you're in pursuit of whatever that thing is. And so I think that is one of the clearest signs of a love addict, where they're constantly living in the idea that once X happens or once Y happens or once Z happens, then I'll be happy. But I'm not able to experience the fullness of the joy in my life right now. And if we compare that to an alcohol addiction or a marijuana addiction or something like that, like, it's very much the same thing, right? It's this sense of I'm chasing something that I think is giving me something. I think it's making me feel good. I think it's making me happy. I think it's making me more connected. I think it's giving me energy. I think whatever, right? I think I'm getting something from this thing I'm doing. But every time I use it, it takes me more and more into a disconnection from my life, right? We could apply that same thing to a relationship. It's like, I think I'm getting something I want. It's exciting. It makes me feel good. It gives me energy. It motivates me. It makes me hopeful. It makes me excited. But I find that every time I chase down a relationship from that kind of frantic, insecure, addicted place, every time I do that, it deepens my insecurity. It deepens my fear of inadequacy. It deepens my fear of rejection, right? These relationships like never really work out. So I'm not like, even though I'm living in the idea that somehow it's gonna work out, it's not working out, right? Like, the relationships never go where I want them to go. And every time all my neuroses and my insecurity just gets heightened because it's being repeatedly triggered every time I go into this. And it's being repeatedly proven, or so it seems to be true, every time a relationship doesn't work out, right? Every time that relationship doesn't work out, it makes me feel that my inadequacy is real. And so this is a cycle of addiction, very, very similar to what we see substance users go through. And so I want to, as I said earlier, I was doing a little research on this topic, and I wanted to come up with like a good bullet point list of like, you might have love addiction if, right? So this is one of the best lists I found online, and I just want to go over it quickly just to give you some perspective on what quantifies love addiction and what doesn't. So number 1 is feeling lost or uprooted without a partner. Number 2, feeling overly dependent on the partner, right? So being lost or uprooted is like, I feel like I have no place or no purpose if I'm not in a relationship. Number 2, feeling overly dependent on the partner is, that's kind of obvious, but it's like, I depend on them to meet my emotional needs. I depend on them for happiness. I depend on them for joy. I depend on them to feel good about myself, right? It's like my internal needs that really I would want to come from inside of me. I'm leaving that up to my partner. Prioritizing the relationship with a partner over family or friends, right? And I could even extend this to a night at home by yourself, right? If it's like this partner takes priority over everything. One of the most beautiful signs of growth that I see with my clients, and I love this every time I see it, is when they will turn down a date because they had plans to spend a night at home by themselves. And they are actually more excited about just relaxing and taking it easy and watching their favorite movie and making a great meal and taking a bath or whatever it is, right? But they're more excited about the love and care that they're going to give to themselves that night than they are about going out and trying to get it from someone else. And it's not that they don't want a relationship, or it's not that they won't make time in their schedule for it. I think the isolation can go to an unhealthy extent, of course, right? But it's not that they're not dating or making time for relationships. It's just that their time that they have with themselves is just as sacred as time they have with a partner. There's not this automatic assumption that time with a partner is better. Number 4 is becoming depressed and obsessed with a love interest when romantic advances aren't reciprocated, right? So there's this inability. And when I was experiencing love addiction, I think this was very true for me. There was this inability to date someone and get to know them and be okay with whether they liked me or not. And for some of you hearing this right now, that might sound like an impossibility for you. I just want you to imagine, and I want you to honestly, be honest with yourself if you really think you can do this, because I think this is one of the most telltale signs. So imagine you meet someone, you're attracted to them, you like them, you've been on maybe 2 or 3 dates with them, and they tell you after a couple of dates that, hey, it's been wonderful getting to know you. I've had a great time, and I just think I'm looking for something a little different, or I'm not feeling the connection I'm looking for, whatever they say, right? But they make it clear to you that you're not what they're looking for. And I want you for a moment to just imagine being in that situation and ask yourself, can I genuinely feel okay about that? Because truthfully, when I look back at my experience with love addiction, the moment I could say I was truly free of it was that moment. It was the moment when I didn't need someone else to want me. It was the moment when I felt good enough about myself that if somebody else didn't want me, that was okay. Now, I'm not going to say there's not a little bit of maybe disappointment, like I got my hopes up and now I feel a little let down. Yes, there, of course, anytime we get excited or hopeful and then we feel let down, there may be a slight depression of our energy in that. But I just want to say from personal experience, that slight depression in energy from being just a little bit disappointed that it's not going where I thought it would is night and day from the type of suffering I used to endure around ruminating. Do they like me? Do they not? What do I have to do? Am I enough? All of that. It's a very different experience. Number 5, constantly seeking romantic relationships regardless of quality, right? So I think this is a huge one too, right? Do I have more of a need to be in a relationship than to be in the right relationship? You might ask yourself, have I seen myself clinging to relationships even when I know they weren't good for me? But I would rather have the relationship than its absence, even if it was unhealthy. That's like a huge red flag in terms of love addiction right there. Feeling despondent without a romantic partner or a relationship. That's similar to feeling lost or uprooted, right? Just feeling a sense of meaninglessness or purposelessness or an inability to find joy in your life. Having difficulty leaving unhealthy or toxic relationships. Again, similar to what I just spoke about. This one, making poor decisions based on emotions felt towards a partner or a love interest. And some examples here are quitting a job or cutting ties with family, right? So if you've ever made poor decisions like that or allowed someone to pressure you and control you like that and push you into decisions like that, right? That would be a telltale sign of love addiction. If you didn't have an addiction happening in that relationship, you wouldn't allow someone to kind of push you around or control your life that way, right? So if you're subjecting yourself to that, I would say 100% that's an addiction. And this last point here, obsessively thinking of the other person to the point of disruption, right? So this kind of constant rumination, I just can't get it out of my head. I mean, would you like to improve your meditation and hypnosis skills? If so, I want to share with you an app that I am absolutely falling in love with. It's called the Aura app, and truthfully, I have never seen so many mental health resources all available in one single place. You get access to meditations, hypnosis, breath work, sound healing, energy healing, plus you get access to coaches and therapists from all over the world, and you even get access to courses and programs ranging on everything from managing anxiety to navigating relationships. This is one of the best mental health apps I have ever found. I use it for myself. I use it for my students in my program. It is one of the most incredible tools, and I want to share it with you. The best news is right now you can try it completely free. So if you look in the description below wherever you're listening to this podcast, you will find a link to activate your free trial for the Aura app. In addition to that, you'll also receive a 25% discount on whatever membership option you do choose to activate. They're all pretty reasonable to begin with, but you'll get an additional 25% off by going through my link in the description. So what are you waiting for? Get moving, improving your meditation, hypnosis, and overall personal wellness. The Aura app is going to be an amazing tool in helping you do that, and you can get started absolutely free right now in the link below wherever you're listening to this podcast. So go check it out, and thanks for being here. I remember situations where I would be like thinking about a girl I was dating at work. I just like could not get it out of my head. I'd call my friends and like talk to them about it, and they're like, dude, like just shut up already. I'd say, I mean, I don't know if I've experienced every single thing on this list. I probably have, to be honest, but I've experienced a lot of it. And I think that a lot of us do. Even more so, this behavior is considered normal. And I want to say this, it's considered normal because it is normal behavior. But just because it's normal behavior doesn't mean it's healthy behavior. And I want you to think about it like this. You know, when we were in grade school, I mean, we had the DARE program come in. And, you know, it told us not to smoke weed, not to do cocaine and heroin and alcohol and right. Like from the time we were very, very young, people have been telling us, don't do drugs, don't drink, don't gamble, even sex. It's like, you know, sex should only be had after you're married or in a loving relationship. Like, I'm not saying all of us were told that, but a lot of the impressions we've got have been these things, right? We have been cautioned our entire life around drugs, sex, and gambling, while simultaneously being encouraged to go find love. Now again, finding love is not a bad thing. Finding a committed, loving, secure relationship is not a bad thing at all. It's a beautiful thing. It's a wonderful thing. It's one of the greatest experiences we can have in life. But what people overlook is the same thing that's happening inside of people that makes us feel like we need to go into schools and say, don't do drugs and don't do alcohol and don't gamble and don't have sex, right? Like the same things that are happening inside of people that makes our society feel like we need to tell them to not do these things. When we go out and seek love, those same exact things are running the show. And so while we are seeking love, we're doing it from a wounded, insecure, dysregulated place, which means when we find someone and when we experience the chemical cocktail that is created when we're attracted to someone, we will become addicted to that. Because the sense of emptiness or inadequacy or fear, it's all different forms of fear. And that sense of fear and emptiness and inadequacy inside is going to latch on to that high of being in love as a cure for it. I mean, I know like when I was 13 years old and I smoked pot for the first time, I felt something that I had never felt before in my life. And I said, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing. And it took me a long time to realize it's not as amazing as I thought it was when I was 13. I think the same thing happens when we fall in love for the first time. We experience a high that is not different from a drug high. It's not. Like if you, I did an episode on this recently. And if you haven't listened to this episode, I did an episode on attraction talking about the neurochemicals and the hormones that are released in dating and relationships and attraction. And I talked about the different stages and the different hormones that are released in each stage. The chemical cocktail that is released in the attraction stage of a relationship makes your brain resemble the brain of somebody who is on drugs. This is a scientific fact. Like I'm not like you can go look this up. You can go research this. What happens to our brain on love is the same thing that happens to our brain on drugs. And just to put it very simply, what that is we are being flooded with neurochemicals on a level that is way, 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 way outside of the norm. Our brain has a very balanced process of delivering neurochemicals. There's a lot of nuance. It regulates it very delicately. It gives you some, it withdraws some. Your brain naturally maintains a very, very delicate balance of your neurochemicals. And when you put a drug into your system, it overrides that balance and it floods the brain. When you fall in love, the same exact thing happens. Your brain is flooded with massive amounts of dopamine, norepinephrine, and your serotonin level drops, which I'm not going to go into what all that means right now, but if you want to go listen to the episode I did a few weeks ago on attraction, I do a deep dive on what all of that means. I think the same thing happens during sex. I mean, it definitely does. That's not an opinion. It definitely does. And I would venture to say even gambling, right? When you sit down at that card table or whatever it is, if you're a gambling addict, and I mean, I've never been a gambling addict. Like the idea of throwing money away, like that never sounded fun to me. Anytime I've gambled in my life, I just left feeling awful. Like I never got high on it, but I think some people do. And people who do get high on it have that same neurochemical reaction. What I said in that episode on attraction, and I want to reiterate it here because I think when I really started studying the hormone levels and how this all works and really like running it by my history with addiction and what I know about that, it was like the biggest light bulb in the world went off for me because I realized what I was doing and what so many of us are doing in the dating world is we are actually not seeking love. We are trying to get high. And you might resist that idea, but just listen with an open mind to what I'm about to say. And let me know if this resonates for you. We think we're seeking love, but we are really just trying to get high. And this is the evidence I'm going to back that up with. Many people think when the attraction fades in a relationship that it is not meant to be. And they will then leave that person to go find someone else that they're more attracted to. If you've ever done that, that's an addict move. I say that with love, but that's an addict move because here's the thing. Attraction always fades. Your brain can simply not maintain that amount of neurochemicals for that long. Like it would probably kill you. If you're chasing the feeling of attraction, rather than seeking someone that you can be a best friend with for life, I say this with so much love and so much compassion, you're a love addict. Because every single relationship you get into, when the honeymoon phase passes, when all the frills die down, when it all passes, and you get into living real life with that person, they're going to feel like at best your closest friend in the world. You're not going to be obsessed with them. You will love them in the sense that you love a family member. You'll love them in that way, but you won't be obsessively in love with them. That's just not the way the human body and brain works. And so if you are seeking attraction rather than partnership, you're feeding a love addiction. And like I said, when I really realized that, it was like the biggest light bulb in the world went off because I finally realized why so many of us are stuck in our love lives. It's because every time true, secure love comes around, It feels dull and boring and lame and not exciting. And so we pass it up to go chase that chemical cocktail. Usually the people who trigger that chemical cocktail are toxic. It's part of the game, right? It's part of the chase, the will they or won't they? Do they like me? Is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? That whole dynamic is what creates the chemical cocktail. When someone shows up and says, hey, I love you. I think you're amazing. I want to spend my life with you. I want to be committed to you. That's all gone, right? There's no will they, won't they, do they, don't they? Is it going to happen? Is it not? Am I enough? Am I not enough? Right? Like there's none of that there. And so all that hype, all that game and like the jumping through the hoops, like that ceases. And if you can't receive that, then you are an addict chasing the experience of attraction versus someone who is genuinely seeking a heartfelt partnership. Now, I want to take one more perspective on this. And I want to talk about what I learned in AA and CA and through the 12-step programs around addiction. And I want to say that the 12-step philosophy is not very scientific. And I want to preface that because I do like to back things up with actual fact as much as I can. But that being said, here's an actual fact, is that 12-step methods have been the number one thing to help people heal from addiction in all of history. There has never been a single thing that has proven to be more effective. So while it's not based in scientific fact, it's based more in the subjective experience of addicts and alcoholics. The 12-step process is the most successful process to date. I'm not going to go through all the steps, but what I want to share about the 12-step process is the philosophy is basically this, is that you're seeking an answer to a spiritual problem with physical things, right? So there's a spiritual issue happening inside of you. That sense of, in AA, they call it irritability, restlessness, and discontent. Right? I've been talking about it today as emptiness, loneliness, inadequacy, all different forms of fear, all different forms of insecurity, all different forms of self-doubt. In the 12-step program, they say that is a spiritual condition. It's not a physical condition, it is a spiritual condition. And when you try to take a drug to fix a spiritual condition, you only make the spiritual condition worse. You put a Band-Aid on it temporarily, it relieves the symptoms of the spiritual condition, and the reality of the spiritual condition gets worse. When you chase a relationship, or chase attraction, or chase the experience of falling in love, to try to overcome what is a spiritual issue, every time you chase that relationship, what you're essentially like, you've got to understand that every action you take sends a subconscious message to your mind, right? So when you feel a spiritual disconnection, as I've said, emptiness, loss, loneliness, inadequacy, whatever word you want to give to that, and then you go chase a relationship with someone, thinking the relationship is going to make that go away. The subconscious message that you send to yourself when you do that is to say, I don't have the power to heal this, but somebody else, something else outside of me does. And so you are subconsciously reinforcing the idea of your own inadequacy. This is why when I created the Inspired Love program, I knew from the start it had to be a spiritual process, because what we are really doing is trying to find a fix for a spiritual disconnection. And so the 12-step process is really a process by which we build a relationship with some idea of a higher power, whether that's God or Jesus or Buddha or Krishna or or your own higher mind or your own higher self, right? Or the spiritual aspect of you. Like, there are so many ways. It could be nature. It could be, like, there are so many ways you can relate to this idea of a higher power. The only real important thing is that you connect to it. But I think this higher power is a very real thing. I think it's more real than we are, actually. And I think it will meet you wherever you're at. So if you got to call it, if you got to call it the ocean or nature to connect to it, it'll meet you there. It doesn't take that personally. It just wants to love you, really, is all it wants to do. And it just wants you to stop chasing addictions long enough to be loved by it, is really what it comes down to. And so all healing is really a process of undoing the fear-based ideas that made me think I was something that I'm not. This little inadequate being that was forgotten about in the world and nobody loved or cared about, and I have no real purpose or meaning and I don't matter, right? Like I think that's like our deepest fear, is something like that. And I think all of us, and some more than others, but I think all of us struggle with that fear, right? And healing is moving out of that fear and into a new identity, an identity that, like, I'm loved by my creator. I am infinitely powerful. Like I am endowed with the power to create my life. If I want a loving relationship, I can create that. If I want a successful business, I can create that. If I want to have time to be with my family or do X, Y, Z, like, I can create that, right? And so as I start to step into a new identity, endowed with power, endowed with brilliance, endowed with creativity, endowed with, enlightened ideas and a sense of purpose and meaning. And as I build this relationship with a higher power, that higher power starts to tell me who I am. Hey there, if you've made it this far in the episode, then I want to jump in with a special invitation for you. You've probably heard me mention Inspired Love at least once or twice on the show, and Inspired Love is my private coaching program. It's the culmination of over 15 years of healing work, and we have recently reopened the program for enrollment. Through an in-depth exploration in all 4 dimensions of human experience, that's body, mind, emotion, and spirit, the process allows you to bring balance to anxious, avoidant, or disorganized patterns, to heal and somatically release childhood trauma, to grow spiritually, and to approach intimate relationships from a healthy, emotionally regulated, and secure place. Our students commonly report that they have never seen anything quite this comprehensive. While many teachers offer courses to improve relationship skills or heal insecure attachment styles, it's rare to find something that works in all dimensions of your being. And I specifically designed the program this way because, in my experience, any true healing process must address all of these elements to have any real chance of success. I know what it feels like to crave love on the deepest levels, while simultaneously feeling unworthy or hopeless around it. I know the fear of struggling in relationships and doubting they will ever work out for you. I watched my mother suffer in and out of 4 abusive marriages. I have 4 sisters and I've watched them struggle. I've been through it myself. I know that lack of love can be one of the most painful and lonely experiences, and I created this program because I know a way out of that, and I'm inspired to share it with others. Now, I don't know if this is the right thing for you or not. What I do know is it's changed the lives of so many people, and it continues to do so on a weekly basis. So if you're ready for a big change in your love life, and you're ready to get the most out of your life overall and stop wasting time, in the description below this episode, you can book a free call with another graduate of the program. She can tell you how it's changed her life and share how it might be helpful for you. If it feels right, jump in with us. If not, don't. But don't ignore this opportunity when it could make all the difference in the world for you. Go ahead, book your free intro call at the link in the description, and thanks for listening today. And I start to develop a new sense of who I believe I am. And in that new sense of who I believe I am, addictions don't make sense anymore. When I'm no longer trying to overcompensate for some perceived inadequacy, an addiction doesn't really do anything for me at that point. It just makes me feel sick. And so what I see with so many of my clients or people that maybe we would consider love addicts is like once they start to feel this sense of spiritual connection, they start to see how beautiful and incredible and worthy and amazing they are. And they start to actually live a life that they love and they enjoy. And like their life starts to become an expression of what they find inside of themselves, right? They find this power and this energy and this life and this enthusiasm and this creativity. And then their outside life starts to become a reflection of the thing they've found inside. And in the midst of all this fullness and all this incredible beauty that they're creating in their lives, the old kind of pattern in relationships might show up. And it suddenly seems very disinteresting. It suddenly seems like, why would I even want to go there? Somebody starts to make you feel those anxious feelings and you're like, ew, no, gross. Like, I feel so good all the time. I do not want to be drugged down by that. In fact, I want someone who lives their life the same way I live my life so we can meet in this high vibration and just create magic together. Like, that's what I want. And so I'll often see, especially I see this in the Inspired Love program all the time, is people who have historically clung to relationships to the point of their own destruction start walking away from relationships. Because they just start to say, you know what, this relationship doesn't feel right to me. And it's okay. Like, I'm not desperate. I'm not in a hurry. I'm good. I'm happy. I love my life. I have friends. I have fulfillment. I have purpose. I don't need to cling to this. And I don't want to be busy clinging to the wrong thing when the right thing shows up. So I want to get now the big promise of today. I know I've made you wait for it. The 2 questions that reveal whether or not you're an addict. And I think I've gone over a lot today that will answer that question many different ways as well. But these questions come directly from the 12-step programs and the 12-step model. And they illustrate 2 distinct criteria through which you can identify yourself as an addict. And they call it the obsession and the craving. The obsession and the craving. The obsession is what your mind does in the absence of the thing. Okay? So when I don't have a relationship, when I'm not dating someone, when I don't have a partner, what does my mind do? And for a lot of people, it looks like constantly wondering when and how I'm going to meet someone, constantly strategizing ways to do it, constantly spending hours and hours on dating apps, constantly asking your friends, can you hook me up with someone? Being everywhere you go, you're like on the prowl, like looking around, like, oh, maybe them, right? Like there's like this incessant need to meet someone. And that's the obsession. So in the absence of my addiction, I obsess about it. And in the midst of this obsession, you might find yourself doing things, as I said earlier, like drinking too much, or smoking too much, or shopping too much, or eating too much, or binge watching too much TV, right? Like you might find yourself falling into other habits to mitigate the discontentment that you're feeling. And then the craving is what happens once the addiction is given to you. So it's how you relate with the addiction, where they talk about casual drinkers, which actually, despite all my drug addiction and everything I've been through, I am a casual drinker through and through. Like there is nothing in me. Like I actually don't even like alcohol that much. And when I do drink some, it's like 1 drink is more than enough. So a casual drinker, what they talk about in AA or in the 12-step programs is that, a casual drinker will have 1 or maybe 2 drinks and that'll be satisfied and they'll sip on it for a long period of time, right? Like they don't need to down it. Where when an alcoholic takes a drink, they take 1 drink and that triggers a craving for another, which triggers a craving for another, which triggers a craving for another, and on and on and on and on and on. So I've experienced both because I am a very casual drinker, but also a very addicted drug user. So I've experienced both. And when you start dating someone, do you start to have that insatiable craving for them? So if you've been talking every day and then they take a day off. I'm craving, I need my fix, right? Or if they need some space, or just even not if, right? Do you need more and more and more and more and more? And are you constantly wondering when you're going to see them again and how you can see them more often, and trying to push this relationship forward at an unreasonable or incredible rate, or expecting the two of you to be in love yesterday when you just met yesterday, right? So those kinds of behaviors in relationship, the craving for more and more and more, the insatiability, right? No matter what this person offers you to let you know that they like you, or to make you feel secure, or to make you feel comfortable in the relationship, you need more. It's not enough. You never feel secure. Which I don't have to explain this to you. You already know that if you show up to a relationship that way, you will sabotage it. You will either destroy the relationship, or you will find someone who wants to use that and manipulate you. And so this is why when we approach relationships that way, we often end up with toxic people, because toxic people are the only people who stay with people like that. You've got to get that. When you show up all craving and insatiable like that, the only person who's going to stay with you is someone who wants to use that to manipulate and control you. Someone who's looking for a secure, healthy relationship is going to feel like this is just a little too much. You're a nice person, but I'm not feeling what I'm looking for here. So the two questions are, in the absence of a relationship, can you be okay? Can you be patient? Can you trust? Can you enjoy your life? Like really enjoy your life, like to the fullest, like not feel that anything is missing. And yes, of course, you want a relationship. It's on your vision board. It's on your goal sheet, right? You're going out on dates, like you're doing the thing. I'm not saying that you neglect it. But in the process, can you genuinely be at ease? Or are you constantly obsessing about it? And when you start dating someone, do you develop this craving for them? Do you develop this insatiability that nothing is ever enough? It's never enough. I need more, I need more, I need more time, more attention, more validation, more love. I want to see them more often. I want more security. I want to know sooner. I want to, right? Like in every way, all the way, right? That's the craving. According to the 12-Step Fellowship, which again is the most prolific form of addiction support in the world, if you answer yes to those two questions, you're an addict. If you obsess about it in the absence, and when you have it, you develop an insatiable craving for more, you're an addict. Now, what I want to say is that being an addict is not as scary as it might sound. And I say this as someone who has had the worst addictions and recovered from them. It's not as scary as it might sound, and here's why. Is because, as I said earlier, you're dealing with a spiritual issue. You're dealing with a spiritual disconnection. You're dealing with a feeling inside of yourself that no amount of drugs, sex, or rock and roll can fix, right? Like you're dealing with something that goes to the core of who you are. And the core of who you are is spiritual, by the way. Like you're not a physical being, you're a spiritual being having a physical experience. And this discontentment comes from your disconnection from the truth of who you are. And I've talked a lot about how we experience trauma and how we go through all kinds of experiences in life that do disconnect us from who we are. But the great news about having a spiritual problem is it's much easier to fix than a physical problem. In fact, when you start fixing spiritual problems first, your physical problems tend to work themselves out. Because the truth is all the power is inside of you. And all that happened is that you believed a lie. I want you to get that. All that happened was that you believed a lie. You believed that being loved by somebody could offer you something you don't already have. And because you believed that, You've spent your life up until now seeking for that rather than seeking inside of yourself for what you already have. It's just simple misdirection. It's like a magic trick, right? Just look over here while the trick's happening over here. See, the situation is not as hopeless or helpless or as difficult as you might think. All that's been happening is you've been looking for the answers in the wrong place. And so what I have is a method that I have written from my soul. I've used everything I've learned, from addiction to relationships to attachment styles to spiritual methods to, just all of it, right? All of it. It's a complete comprehensive program that is designed to allow you to form this spiritual connection that will enable you to feel secure, confident, powerful, creative, brilliant. Like what it does is it allows you to truly tap in to 100% of your resources that up until now in your life you've been outsourcing. And you've been outsourcing to your own demise, because every time you outsource, you subconsciously reinforce your lack of power, your lack of ability. And so what the Inspired Love program is a step-by-step process by which I guide you to form this deep spiritual connection and then bring it out into your life in the most beautiful and magnificent ways. And what I want to say is it just works. Because the problem was never outside of you. You see, for those of you who right now feel like you're struggling to find love, I want you from the bottom of my heart to understand this. Your struggle to find love was never about you needing to go out in the world and find someone who likes you and you thinking, I just need to try one more time. If I just go on a date every week, eventually I'll meet someone who likes me. Like, that was never the problem. That was never the problem. The problem was, is, and always has been that you have been approaching it from a wounded and insecure place. And you have been asking relationships to do something for you that they literally cannot do. You put a partner in that position, you're going to make them feel deeply inadequate. And so all I want you to hear right now is that the solution is very simple. And I have a process that can guide you in the solution. Now, you could go work 12 steps on this if you want to. There's Love Addicts Anonymous, right? So I'm not saying this is the only way. There are many ways. But I do have a process that I've written from the depths of my soul that has a very high success rate with lots and lots of people. And if you want to, you can go ahead and book a free discovery call to learn a little more about that process and see if it could work for you. And if you're ready to really break this cycle, and I'd say, if you've been listening today and you really feel like you're a love addict, then this program would be amazing for you. If you're listening today and you feel like, I don't know if I'm a love addict, I resonate to some of it, I resonate not, well, I'd say, do you feel like you want to experience more in life and in love, right? Do you feel like there's untapped resources inside of you that you just can't get a hold of? And can you feel that, when you really grasp those and you really bring those into your life, that love and everything else is going to be amazing? Right? That would be the question. Do you feel that there's something inside that you just got to get a hold of? And that's going to fix everything. And are you tired of seeking and not finding? Are you tired of chasing and coming up empty-handed? And if you are, then that is what the Inspired Love program is for. And so if you've made it this far in the podcast, if you're resonating with today's information and you want to take one more step towards your healing and towards the amazing life and love that you so deserve to have, I'm just going to invite you right now to book a discovery call. I will leave the link right below this podcast, wherever you're listening to it. In the description below it, you will find the link to book your discovery call. And that's just a free call with one of our team members, another graduate of the program who will share their story with you. It's just a free call to find out if this is the right thing for you. If it resonates, jump in. If it doesn't, don't worry about it. Find something that resonates more. But you don't have to continue repeating these patterns. There is a way out. And that's what I want you to know. Everything you want in life, you can have it. But it's going to require you to start looking where it can actually be found and stop chasing empty dreams. So I say that with so much love and blessings to all of you. Thank you for being with me today. As I shared, this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. I think addiction is a big issue, and I think it's more pervasive and more real for more people than we even realize. And so I hope I could spread some awareness about that today. If you're struggling with this, I hope I can give you some hope that there is a way out and it's not as hard or as complex as you might think. And I hope I gave you some direction on where to get started. So lots of love, everybody. Thanks for being with me today, and I'll see you back here next week. Many blessings. Bye. Thanks again for checking out the show. Please subscribe on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on the most. And I would love it so much if you leave a review and tell people what you think of us. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram @TheLivingRelationship to connect more closely. And I'm grateful to be supporting you on your journey to love.